For some reason, my webcam, when I um, live stream for any length of time, my webcam or YouTube just decides to stop allowing it to live stream. And I'm sorry for the noise of the fans, folks, but it's muggy today. All right, let's view this channel. Yep, there'll be commercials in the beginning. There we go.
Make your browser fast.
And let's just pop out the chat. How's it going? All right. And then make it live chat. Hey, everybody. I'm sorry about the last live stream. I swear either my webcam overheats or I don't know, because I have good Bell 5 Wi-Fi. There's no reason for it to just kind of go blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's a pain in the butt. I'm gonna have to get a better webcam. Alrighty, day 3 of On the Way Home. I'm gonna turn this light on so I can read. July 23. We started at 8. Hated to leave our camping place. It seems quite like home. We crossed the James River and in 20 minutes we reached the top of the bluffs on the other side. We all stopped and looked back at the scene, and I wished for an artist's hand or a poet's brain, or even to be able to tell in a good plain prose how beautiful it was. If I had been the Indians, I would have scalped more white folks before I ever would have left it. We could see the river winding down the valley, the water gleaming through the trees that grow on the bank. Beyond it, the bluffs rose high and bare, browned and burned. Above the lovely green of trees and grass and the shining water. On this side, the bluffs again were gigantic brown waves tumbled and tossed about. On this side of the James, we passed fields of corn 8 feet high. There are cottonwood hedges along the road, the trees 10 inches through and 35 to 40 feet tall. But it all seems burned and bare after our camping grounds by the river. 10 o'clock. It is 101 in the shade in the wagon and hardly a breath of air. At 11 o'clock, 9 miles from Yankton, we stopped at a windmill to water the horses. The man who owned the house told us he paid $5,000 for 3 80s without a building. And remember, they were, betting $14 against Uncle Sam that he could, in 5 years prove up on property. For 380 sections, so that's 240 acres. $5,000. Not far from Yankton, we crossed a bone-dry creek bed with the most desolate barren bluffs on each side. Covered with stones and the grass dry and brown. They looked like great drifts of sand that someone had stopped drifting. We reached Yankton at 4 o'clock, drove by the insane asylum. The buildings look nice and they stand in the middle of a large farm of acres and acres of corn and potatoes. Manley wanted to stop and go through the asylum, but I could not bear to, so we did not. Remember back then, all you had to do was, if you didn't like your wife or she didn't do as she was told, you could put her in an asylum. We passed by Yankton College. The buildings are very nice. I'm greatly disappointed in Yankton. It's a stick in the mud. We drove all over the town to find a little feed for the teams, went to the mill and the elevator and the feed stores, and finally found a couple of sacks of ground feed, but not a bit of flax in the whole town. And there's a star here. It says, flaxseed was indispensable first aid to hurts and minor ills. A boiling hot flaxseed poultice holds hotter heat longer than a bread and milk one, and it usually works better than layers of cold vinegar and brown paper. Flaxseed is also, if you grind it and you mix a level tablespoon of ground flaxseed with a quarter cup of boiling water and stir it and let it sit, it congeals and it can be an egg replacer. There were no green vegetables, nor any figs, nor dates in the grocery stores. It would be a blessing to Yankton if Carpenter would move down here, or if folks in Yankton would send to DeSmet for what they need. They have a number of elevators, 2 or 3 mills, and 6 feed stores, but we carried most of the feed away in 2 sacks. I got my revolver fixed. I didn't know she had a gun. Then we had to spend so much time hunting for feed all over town that Mrs. Cooley got to the ferry first. Mrs. Cooley and Paul crossed the river, then the ferry came back and took Mr. Cooley over. It was leaving just as we drove down to the landing at 6 o'clock, and while we were waiting for it to come back, a bad-looking storm came up. It was not rain, only wind and dust. We had to face the river to keep the wagons back to the wind so that it would not be blown over. The wind lifted the hind wheels twice before Manley could get them roped down. The ferryman did not like to try and cross the river in the storm. He waited on the other side until the blow was over. We were afraid he would not cross again that night, but he did, and there's an asterisk, so I'm going to read it. When the rear wheels lifted as if the wagon were going over end into the river, my father jumped out, leaving the reins in my mother's hands. While she held and gentled the nervous horses, I craned around the edge of the side curtain to see what my father was doing. He was driving a picket pin into the ground and tying a wheel to it with the picket rope. Behind us was a covered wagon, behind it and another, and as far as I could see, covered wagons stood one beyond the other in a long line. Behind them and over them, high over half the sky, a yellow wave of dust was curling and coming. My mother said to me, "That's your last sight of Dakota." A map of the 650-mile journey. Where we crossed the Missouri, it is 1 mile wide. Do you remember when they came across the Missouri? The yellow, it was like a yellow river, and they were on a ferry, which was just like a barge that you drove onto, and the guy pulled it across with a rope. We crossed the Missouri. It is 1 mile wide, very nasty and muddy. I do not wonder that it is called the Big Muddy. And since I've seen the dust blowing into it, I do not think it's strange that it's muddy. The Missouri is nothing like as beautiful as the Jim. Pet made no fuss at all at the ferry, but drove onto it nicely, stood quietly as could be, and calmly drove off it. Her colt little Pet ran onto it loose and stood beside her, as still as a mouse. About a mile from the river, we camped in the woods. Temperature 98. Okay, we'll read a little bit more. July 24th. Mr. Cooley got up early and went fishing, but did not get a bite. We were all tired from being up so late last night and did not get started until 9 o'clock. We had taken the wrong road, so we had to go back to the river and start again on the right one. For a little way, we followed the river and could see down it, 4 or 5 miles across the water. It was a grand sight, though the scenery on the banks is nothing. What is it about water that always affects a person? I'll tell you, because we're made of 75% water. It is the lifeblood of the planet. I never see a great river or lake, but I think how I would like to see a world made and watch it through all its changes. The banks of the Missouri are crumbling all the time and falling into the water. In one place, the road had fallen in. There on the river flats, before we reached the bluffs, we saw 24 haystacks at one time, and mowing had only begun. 4 mowing machines were working. Hay is $9 a ton. Do you remember when they would sell it for 2 back in De Smet? Hay is $9 a ton in Yankton. Well, we have come to the bluffs. On the next side of the river, they look as if they had been cut straight down with a knife. Grass has not grown on the face. All along the foot of it, trees are growing, sheltered from the south wind. Plums, grapes, black currants, and sweet clover grow wild on the bottomland. Sweet clover 8 feet high. Guys, I've never seen clover more than 2 feet high. And the first oak trees we have seen. We've been going over the bluffs, the most desolate bare hills I ever saw, without houses or fields or trees and hardly any grass. Manley said he would just as soon own the whole of Nebraska as not, if it were fenced. Judging from all he has ever seen of the state, it might do for pasture if he did not keep much stock. So far, Nebraska reminds me of Lydia Lockett's pocket. Nothing in it, nothing on it, only the binding around it. We meet covered wagons going north. Manley talked to a couple of men traveling from Kansas to South Dakota. They said there was nothing in Kansas. The hens are laying yet. Temperature 110. And we'll do July 25th, and then I have to go and plant more beets and parsnips and do the garden. We spent the night among the Nebraska hills, July 25th, down in a hollow where they shut us in and not a house in sight. This morning, I like to look at the hills. There's something fascinating in their loneliness. We started at 7:35. Now when we travel, we got to park in Walmart parking lots because all the land along rivers is either owned, corporately owned, or privately owned. We started at 7:35. It is a nice cool morn. We went through Harrington at 8:30. It is a nice town. I like it much better than Yankton, though it is smaller. Passed through Coleridge at 12:30. Not much of a place. The wind is blowing and the dust is flying till we can hardly see. Talk about hard roads in Dakota. Never saw hard roads till now. The more I see of Nebraska, the less I like it. We have been climbing over bluffs all day. Just south of Coleridge, there are 22 families that are going to start for Missouri in about 6 weeks. Though this country is very thinly settled, one man said he's lived here for 6 years and has not seen a good crop yet. Why is this? We camped, if all these families were leaving in 6 weeks for Missouri, I'd be heading out before them. That would be me. Well, they're waiting 6 weeks. Let's go now because they may get all the good spots. You know what I mean? We camped east of the town of Belden 1 mile, but within sight of it by a creek. Not so much as a bush was to be seen. Manley did the chores so Mr. Cooley could go fishing. He caught 11 fish. Temperature 109. The man living near where we camped is working for a man in Sioux City who owns 3,000 acres of land here. In a body, 500 acres of it are in pasture and 250 in meadow. July 26th. Mr. Cooley went fishing again this morning and caught 2. We were on the road at 8:40. There has been plenty of rain right here and crops are good, corn, wheat, and oats. But 3 miles west, they have nothing. Land is $25 an acre here. Met a load of immigrants at noon. They are going north. Thermometer 110 in the shade. This afternoon we met a family of immigrants, man, woman, and 2 children. They had been to Missouri and were coming back. They started from Moody County, Dakota, the 8th of May and went to Taney County, Missouri. They stayed only 10 days and started back. Have been on the road ever since. They would not live in Missouri if you gave them the whole of it. Why, hardly any of the houses have windows in them. Just holes, and lots of women have never seen a railroad, train, nor an organ. And the land is awful stony. They think of stopping in Cedar County, Nebraska. Crops are poor since noon. Country about as dry as Dakota. Went through Windside about 4 o'clock. Roads are awfully hilly, and Mr. Cooley wishes he had kept farther west, gone to Columbus instead of Schuler. Cross Humbug Creek and camped by the first house south. The people are Germans and very nice. They gave us milk. Humbug Creek and Windside are well named, only they should have spelled it Windside. We have faced a hot, hard wind all day. All right, we'll be back another day for more of On the Way Home, the diary of a trip from South Dakota to Mansfield, Missouri in 1894 with Laura, Manley, and Rose. Well, folks, I have to go and plant some more beets and parsnips in my garden and water it. Then I gotta do dishes, and then I'm gonna have a swim. All right, I love you. Take care. God bless, and we'll see you all soon. Mwah.